Hey there, folks. Hello. Hi there. Apologies to getting in the way of your networking. As these lovely ladies said, my name's Cassie Fleming, and it's an absolute pleasure to spend the next hour or so with you. So a couple of things. Firstly, I want to say congratulations to these two ladies for bringing this wonderful community together and creating it. So massive congrats. And also congratulations to all of you guys for coming. One of the things I love about Israel is that it is a culture of really great, strong women. So I'm really, really excited to be here. And a huge thank you for all of you coming, like I said, to spend some time with me tonight. On behalf of Microsoft, I know you mentioned that earlier, massive welcome in here as well. And I understand that about half of this room is new to this forum. So special, special welcome to you guys. As these lovely ladies said, my name's Cassie Fleming. I'm based in Dubai. My role at Microsoft is leading up talent sourcing for India, Middle East, and Africa. But tonight I get to talk about something super interesting, passionate, and really, really close to my heart, which is about building your brand. The few things that I'm going to talk about tonight, right? I'm going to give you a little background into me. These ladies told me to tell you a little bit about me, who I am, what I'm about, how I got to kind of be here. And then I'm going to talk to you about the concept of brand, right? It's not new to anyone. So we'll talk about consumer brands, but then we'll really spend most of our time talking about the concept of personal brand, okay? And then next steps. I'm going to kind of try and keep this really practical so that you guys can leave here with some things to kind of think about and do after you leave tonight, okay? So the first slide is telling you a little bit about me. This is my career tree. If we start at the top, you can see this section on hospitality. So essentially, I've had kind of two careers in my close to 20 years work experience now. So I started my life, I did a business degree at university in hotel management. And so basically what I did was start working in hotels, obviously. I worked in restaurants and bars in hotels, and then I started into some management positions in hotels, right? And so that was when I was super young. So terrifying as a manager at a really young age, but amazing experience. And I promise you I wasn't very good at that age at all. Some of these folks know me well now. I'm very pleased to say I look a lot different to how I did then in terms of my kind of people leadership ability. But for me, my hospitality time was really formative in terms of my own career for a number of reasons. One is because I learned about being a people leader really young. And I learned some hard lessons in terms of how tough that was and how you don't wake up and be an excellent manager or an excellent leader. It takes loads and loads of practice, right? And loads of lessons along the way. What I also took from my hospitality days is my absolute innate desire to create great experiences for people, right? So why I loved hotels was because people would come into my restaurant. I didn't own it, but I was managing it. And we could basically give them a wonderful dining experience, right? And so I'm very, very passionate, as my team would know, about customer experience and the experience that, for example, our candidates have when they're interacting with Microsoft. So I'm Australian by origin, long way from home here. When I was kind of early to mid 20s, I went to London and managed a restaurant and kind of started it up over in London, which again taught me a whole heap of lessons in terms of working with people from a whole heap of different cultures. When I came back to Sydney, grand age of 24, 25, and I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. Sore feet, terrible money, finishing at 3 a.m., my friends were playing when I was working, kind of wasn't cool. So I thought, what did I love to do, which was really all about teams and people. And so what I got into was recruitment consulting. So you call them headhunters here. So basically I took my hospitality skills into a headhunter agency, right? And so what I did was I interviewed people to go and work in hotels. Can you carry 3 plates? Can you go and work in a restaurant, right? And then placed people in hotels. So I kind of learned a bit about that. And then I was super fortunate in getting my kind of first opportunity at PwC, which was kind of my first corporate opportunity where I went in and worked in university recruitment. Anyone who knows those university hiring people is all about energy and personality. You don't really need a whole lot more, right? I barely understood what PwC did, but they wanted the energy, they wanted the personality, and I went out on campus and recruited awesome kind of graduates. But what I was super fortunate about is that I had a tough 5 years there, probably never work as hard again in my life, but had about 4 different roles across recruiting and human resources in Australia and China. And kind of before I left there after 5 years. Amazing experience. I learned a whole heap about what professionalism actually means. I learned a whole heap about interacting with super senior smart partners who basically thought no one was as smart as them or ever going to be. And so you had to have all your stuff together before you went and saw them. So it kind of taught me a lot about preparation, about structure, and about really showing up every single time. So then I kind of got to this. I've been there 5 years. I want to take the next step. And I did a tiny role in a bank, Westpac, big bank in Australia. That's not very interesting, but it taught me, I was there for all of 18 months. It taught me a couple of things. One, I didn't really like it, right? So it made me realize what was important to me culturally in an organization I worked in, right? It was a big, structured, process-oriented, rule-oriented bank where people kind of didn't really talk to each other. And so it wasn't really my bag, but I learned a whole heap about process orientation when I talk to my team now, but that's where I really kind of got my process orientation from, because I'd never worked on anything with such a big scale. So that's really why I went there. Then I went to a great company called Luxottica. Has anyone heard of them? Yes, what do they do? Tell me, what do they do? What do you know about them? What does the company, tell me about the company. What do they do? Glasses, absolutely. They own Ray-Ban, Oakley, Revo, Persol, Arnett, and they make the frames for everyone from Chanel, Bulgari, Tiffany, etc. And in Australia, they had 1,000 retail stores when I worked there. And so that was my first job where I got to run my own very little recruiting function, right? Team of 4, and we recruited for all those stores in Australia. It was chaos. It was volume hiring, but it was a fast-paced, creative, fun, quirky, young environment. So for me, it taught me all these lessons about how to get results in a very different environment from a Westpac or a PwC, right? Then I had the wonderful opportunity to relocate to Singapore. So I moved to Singapore about 5 years ago and worked for a consulting company called Talent 2, where basically what I did was help set up recruitment functions for clients, right? And again, it took me back to a PwC in terms of consulting, and it took me back to my process orientation. The other thing it taught me was about being commercial. Because in these organizations, these clients were paying a bill at the end of the month for their recruitment function. So you absolutely had to justify your return on investment. And then I was very, very fortunate to move to Microsoft about 3 years ago in Singapore. And what I did there was heading up recruiting for APAC. So Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and Korea. Okay. And then a year ago, nearly, I relocated to Dubai to take on this role. So that's a little kind of bit about my career. It's a little bit strange, granted. It's quite diverse. I feel super privileged in terms of the background that I've had and the lessons that I've learned along the way. The 2 things of interest up there are around networks. So the yellow kind of little star thing there was the roles that I got from networks. Okay, so about half my roles I was successful in getting through my own networks. And secondly, the purple star is the organizations I've worked in where I did a number of different roles. Okay, and I think for me, that's where personal brand comes in. Because when I see a CV of someone who has been with an organization for a certain period of time and has had a number of different roles there, you kind of go, this is interesting, because this person obviously did well enough in that organization to be promoted. Okay, so for me, it's just kind of an interesting marker in terms of kind of half the companies that I've been with, I did a number of different roles in there. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a flavor about my background. So let's get into the session. We all know about consumer brands, okay? I'm going to show up a couple of logos, and I want you guys to just raise your hand and let me know what comes to mind first off when you look at these brands. McDonald's, anyone? Yes. Hamburgers, yes. Fast food. Service, thank you, Addie. Fat, yeah, I think that too. What? Anything else? Clean toilets, yes. Greasy, yes. See, Wi-Fi, see, a whole heap of words come to mind, right? And for me, Addie knows this. For me, it is about service and it's about process. I studied McDonald's with all my hospitality stuff. They have some of the best processes going around. You walk into any McDonald's, pretty much looks the same. The process looks the same. It's just the personality that looks a little bit different. Next. Tell me, what comes to mind? Yes. Expensive, yes. Luxury. Designer, yes. Fashion, yes. Bags, yes. High quality, yes. This one, Starbucks. What do we think about Starbucks? Wi-Fi. What else? Lousy coffee, agree. Coffee cake, yes. I agree. Agree totally. It is a machine when you get in there. And as a Microsoft person, we go to Seattle a lot. And so that's the home of Starbucks. It is everywhere. Okay. Can't be in Microsoft without commenting on Microsoft. What comes to mind? Anything goes in this. Everything stays in this room. What do we think about Microsoft? Windows, yes. Corporate, Bill Gates. Old-fashioned, interesting, but not surprising. Yes, thank you. Blue screen. That's not good. I think I'll go with old-fashioned over blue screen. Yes. Satya, yes. Xbox, yes. Apple, interesting. Okay. Processors, yes, correct. Okay, so we all know about consumer brands. So the kind of aim of sharing that with you is just to remind us that the minute we see one of these brands, a whole heap of things immediately come to mind for us, okay? And so it's no different to the concept of personal brand, okay? So given all of you guys have come here tonight, hopefully of your own will, and you've seen the flyer about personal brand, so you kind of must have had some view of what we're going to be talking about today. So why do you think it's important to think about personal brand? To be reminded? Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons to talk or think about personal brand is so you can be remembered. Yes. Yeah, very cool. You need to know who you are to introduce yourself to others. Yeah, to pinch yourself, kind of look in the mirror, give yourself a bit of a wake up. Correct. To differentiate yourself from others, absolutely. To position yourself, absolutely. This room is a good room. Right. So this is why I personally think it's important. To what you guys were saying, it very much keeps you on the front foot, right? And from what you guys were saying, basically what it's about is knowing what's unique about you and how to leverage off it, okay? It helps you to proactively manage your profile. Because the reality is, guys, the concept of personal brand is no different from consumer brand. When I stood up on stage here, you guys would have thought a whole heap of things about me. Because we make judgments, right? We see people, we form initial impressions, okay? So whether we like it or not, everyone forms impressions of you everywhere you go. And by thinking about and talking about and knowing about your own personal brand, it gives you a whole heap of power to really leverage off it and to be really conscious of how you impact with others and the impression that you leave with other people. Okay. So what is personal brand? What do we mean when we talk about personal brand? By definition, it's the process by which we market ourselves to other people. Will these guys have a copy of the slides? Yes, I'm happy if they do. Yes. Okay, so basically, this is one of my favorite sayings: perception is reality. You know, I was giving stays in this room. I was giving one of my team some feedback the other day. My guys could not listen. I was giving one of my team some feedback the other day, and they were kind of challenging me on that feedback and saying, "No, that's not true. That's definitely not true." And I said to them, "But whether or not you think it's true, that's the impression that the other person got. That's the perception that they got from interacting with you, right? So whether we like it or not, someone else's perception is their reality. Okay? So it's all about who you are and what you want to be known for. Okay. Are we good so far? Great. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's a really cool question. And I'll kind of talk about my own kind of brands a little bit further. The question was, how should you kind of change your brand or not change your brand? Or, is it, if you want to be this way now, will you change in time and your brand will be different? My opinion is a lot of this is super inherent in who we are. And it's not easy to change much of this stuff, right? But it's about understanding it, leveraging off it, and kind of utilizing it as best as you can. I'll give you an example. So one of my kind of core characteristics from a personal brand perspective, whether I like it or not, is energy, right? So there is a high energy scenario that is absolutely just inherent in who I am, okay? And when I was much younger and I was working at PwC, I had a manager who said to me, "Stop running," right? Because it's kind of not cool to run down the hallways in a corporate environment. And it makes you look disorganized. It makes you look like you're always running late. It makes you look like you're always stressed. So the fact is, my team would probably still call me high energy now. I'm sure they would. But I manage it in a different way so that the way it kind of comes out is not about running down the hallway, but about ensuring that the way I show up in meetings and the way I respond and the way I contribute and the way I engage with other people. So the energy piece is never going to change, but it's about how I utilize it in an appropriate way. I hope that helps. Yes. And it has to be authentic, because the fact is we don't get to choose our personal brand that much. I mean, it's about being authentic and true to who you are and knowing who you are as a person, right? And understanding how that impacts on other people. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys kind of a couple of minutes on your own. Did you have a question? Yes. Yes. Well, yes, but I think it's about what you exaggerate and what you don't. So I do think that I don't think you. I mean, this debate can go on till the end of the time in terms of whether you're a different person outside work or inside work or in these scenarios. Some people can be. I know I can't. I am the same person inside and outside work, but the way the energy looks inside work is different to what it looks outside work. And I think it's about understanding your brand, and it's about knowing when you want to exaggerate certain things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So take a couple of minutes and think about one of your role models. Why do you look up to them, and what are a few words that you would use to describe them? Don't need to share it back, but I just want you guys to take a couple of minutes to think it through to kind of get into the swing of things. If you want to discuss it with your neighbor, feel free. We'll just take a minute or two. And guys, the last question for me is the most important one. What is it they actually do to make you think of them in this way? Great scarf. Oh, sometimes I forget I'm on microphone. Great scarf. We all right? Okay, folks. Okay, team. Hopefully that was a good activity to kind of get you to start thinking about some stuff. Did anyone want to particularly share anything that they talked about or the person they talked about? Oh, yes. Go for it. Oh. Hello, hello.
Thank you. My role model is a woman named Ronda Rousey. She was an Olympic judo champion,
Ooh.
and now she's a mixed martial arts champion. And the reason she is my role model is two major things. First of all, she became the first MMA fighter of the UFC champion of the world in an area that people used to laugh that women can do this and they can approach and enter this site. And the second thing, she, in all of her interviews and the book she wrote, she's trying to promote women's perception about themselves, that women could be strong, that everywhere you go, you have a right to be there, and you need to believe in yourself. And you can achieve all of your goals as long as you're not afraid. And that's something I really like about her.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'll tell you, if I think about one of my role models, it's one of my role models is an amazing lady named Sharon Bell, who was one of my managers at PwC. Actually, my manager for most of the time I was at PwC. And the words that I use to describe her, a couple of them are generous and caring, and another one for me is balanced. And I'll tell you why I describe her like that, because it's it's specific examples that she has constantly used to show, right? And I remember I had a terrible day one day, and I rang her and I said, Shaz, I absolutely need you. And she said to me, right, we'll go for a glass of wine after work. This is a long time ago. And she brought her kids along, right? Because she had a kid. She was picking them up from school. And I remember Georgia, the little one, was running around trying to take her uniform off when we were sitting there discussing the day, right? And I thought, that is Sharon, because she was able to go and pick her kids up from school. That was super important. But she was there when I said, I really, really need you. And actually, just last year when I was back in Sydney, I caught up with her for lunch. And she's a very senior lady, and she had so much on, and she still came and met me where I was at Microsoft for half an hour just to have lunch and then raced back for another meeting. And I kind of thought, for me, I said to her at that lunch, actually, I said, you know what, you're super inspiring to me because you make time for this stuff. But it's those specific kind of examples that really make me think about her like that. So now it's time to think about yourself a little bit and your personal brand. I think these questions are they're just simple questions, but they're really important to think about asking yourself. How do you come into the office in the morning? How do you leave at night? What energy do you personally bring to your team, to your manager, to your mates? That's very Australian, I was told before, to your work friends. But it's a really important question, guys, right? Because who in the room is not a manager? Fabulous. So all of us, manager or not a manager, have a responsibility and an opportunity to contribute to the culture that you're a part of. Okay? So I think it's important to ask yourself, what energy do you bring to work? How do you show up at work each day? And what energy do you bring to your peers at work and even your manager, right? So let's think about yourself. There's a few questions that you need to ask yourself. We don't need to share this one out, but take a couple of minutes to think about these questions yourself. What are the 3 words that your family or your boss or your partner would use to describe you? And are they the words that you want them to use? Okay. And what do you do that creates this perception? So if you think that one of the words they use to describe you is smart or professional or accomplished or friendly, what is it that you actually do to ensure that they'll use that word? Okay, so have a bit of a think for a couple of minutes, guys, and feel free to chat with your friend next to you, but you don't need to. Take a couple of minutes. When you share this deck with them, just take out the slide about myself that comes up next or the one after. They certainly don't need that. But I think it's useful for them to have the activity to do. Cool? Thank you. Go home. Go home. Good. Oh, good. Good. Thank you. Yeah, everyone's very involved. It's good. Okay, folks, we'll bring it back. I'm conscious it's your Monday night. I hope that was an initial interesting activity for you guys to ask yourself. What I'm going to do now is pop onto something that's kind of a more structured activity for you guys to do after this session. Okay, but I'll take you through it now. So this is the kind of framework that we use in here in terms of our kind of brand, like brand me or my brand uniqueness. Basically, when we think about personal brands, we look at it in 4 key kind of areas. Top left is me as a person. What are my personal interests and values, things that matter to me most? Because whether we like it or not, we bring some of that to work. And for me, I work hard to ensure that my team knows me as a person as well as their boss, right? And I also think it's an opportunity for all of you. It doesn't matter whether you're a manager or not, but how do you help your team to get to know who the real you is, right? Because otherwise it's easy just to see the you at work, but actually getting under that, and it helps you to proactively manage your boss, to be honest, because then you can have that conversation with your boss around this is why I am how I am, right? And it gives you an opportunity to get to know each other in a different way, not to tell them everything you do on a Saturday night, etc., but it's about who are you as an individual and what's really, really important to you, because it helps them in terms of getting the best out of you. Top right is professional. And again, that's about being really clear about what are the working experiences that have had a massive impact on you and helped to really form who you are as an individual, and what should you be leveraging off when you're articulating your proposition to someone. Okay? Bottom left, traits. How do I project my self-worth, and what are the key attributes that I have to offer to others? My key personality traits, to the kind of the questions that we had earlier. This is the section that most people think about when they think about personal brand. And then bottom right is long-term goals. And what that is what engages me as an individual, what excites me the most, because that's, again, inherent in who you are as a person. Okay, so what we will do is give you guys a copy of this so you can take it away and have a little think about it. Some of you guys might think about this stuff every day, right? And it's what you know, and you know yourself super well. Some of us don't think about it all the time. And so just putting 10, 15 minutes thought into this, I think, is super helpful, because it grounds yourself in what value you have to offer, right? The world is competitive. There's everyone's out there trying to get roles, trying to get a whole heap of things. But for you to really be able to articulate who you are in 60 seconds or a couple of minutes and what makes you unique or different is super important. Okay? I am going to just take you through my version of this briefly to give you a bit of a view into kind of my own personal brand, or how I look at this activity. I have done it in pictures, because it's something that I'm comfortable with. And so on the top left-hand side is the personal piece. My family and my friends are massively important to me in terms of what matters most to me. I grew up in a small, very close family, and family values massively important to me. So up there is my mum and dad and my beautiful little nephews. And then I have a group of girlfriends in the middle. I am a real extrovert, so I get my energy from other people, and I know that, right? Sometimes I need a little bit of downtime, but surrounding myself with people that give me great energy is super important to me. I'm an Aussie girl, so you can see there's beach and sports are two of the things that absolutely are inherent in me and keep me centered, right? I am not happy and fulfilled and operating at my best unless I have all this stuff going on. And I'm super conscious of that. I just had a meeting with Maya before this. We kind of had a 6 to 7 meeting. And one of the ladies there said to me, "Oh, you work a lot." Right? Sort of fair. And I said to them, well, I accepted this role at a certain level, so there are some expectations that come with that. But what I do is I'm super disciplined about my diary. If I have night calls, I block the day from 3 to 5 and I go to yoga or I go to boxing or whatever it might be. If I'm home in Australia, I work Australia work hours so I can make sure I see my nephews for bath time and bedtime like lots of you would do with your kids here. So I'm super passionate about making sure I have a balance with stuff. So that's my top left in terms of personal. Professional, I talked you guys through kind of my key work experience before, and you will all have your own beautiful history in terms of your own work experience. What I encourage you to do is really think about what you've taken from each of those experiences and how they have shaped you into who you are. Because I know every day when I do certain things, I know why I've done it, because I was conditioned at PwC, which I pretty much grew up there from a corporate perspective. And so each of those organizations have kind of formed me from a brand perspective in terms of the workplace. Bottom left, personality traits. I know these are all really intrinsic to who I am. I'm incredibly optimistic. It's just the way I am. I see a glass as half full most of the time, and I get quite frustrated when I can't solve things. Joy, again, it's very positive. The right maze is I like a plan. I'm not happy unless I have a plan with deliverables and actions and deadlines. I think it must drive people mad. But I know that for me, I need to have it to feel confident, and then I can give my team a whole heap of space. Without it, I'm diabolical, and you don't want to come anywhere near me. This communication, bottom left, super important to me. I come from a family of big communicators, not necessarily loud, but a lot of talking. You don't go to bed angry. You don't not finish an argument without making up. That's how I was conditioned. And so in the workplace, I need to have open communication with folks, with my peers, and I need to be able to work through kind of issues when I have them. This stuff was important to me. I'll tell you why. When I got my first role with Microsoft, I definitely was not the most experienced person they saw. Without a doubt, I guarantee you. Guarantee you. I had never managed a function outside of Australia. And this was Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and Korea. So on paper, I was definitely not the best person for the job. I came referred by someone else, so there was a network piece in there. But for me, it was some of these things, and I still might not have been the best person they could have hired, but for me, it was about knowing that some of these things was what made me a little bit unique. And so that was what I had to sell up, because I wanted that job, right? But I walked in there knowing that on paper, I absolutely didn't have the experience. So for me, that stuff was some of the stuff that other people didn't have. And so that was what I had to leverage off. And so knowing that myself put me in a better position to articulate why I might be a good bet for them to take. Bottom right is long-term goals. These are the things that are just absolutely critical to my life. One is balance. I talked to you about that before. If I don't have balance, if this whole thing doesn't come together for me, I'm not in a great place, and I know that. So I work really, really, really hard to make it happen. Why I do what I do. It's a kind of Microsoft question, but I encourage you to think about it if you don't know why you do what you do. Why I do what I do, really and truly, is because I love making a difference. I know it sounds cheesy and terrible. I like making a difference to my team. They've heard it before. And I like making a difference to a business. I like being able to see the impact that my function can have on a business. My team, I did this new manager assimilation with my team the other day. It's this funny Microsoft process where your team gives you lots of feedback, right? I jump off the call, feedback. I get onto the call and they share feedback with me. And one of the questions my team asked me was kind of why you do what you do. And what are you driven by, or how do you make decisions in terms of which jobs you do, etc. And for me, it is very simple. It's team and it's making a difference. But you'll remember earlier that I talked about Westpac and how I hated it there. And I wasn't really successful there, to be honest. These things are just important to know about yourself if you haven't done that thinking, because frankly, it helps you make better decisions in terms of the roles you take, the organizations you work in, the partners that you choose, etc. By knowing all this stuff about yourself, it puts you in a better position to be successful and make great decisions. Okay. So we're at 9 o'clock. We're wrapping up soon, folks. To the questions earlier, I think for me, living your brand is about consistency, which builds trust. I like to think that not everything about me is perfect, I guarantee you. But what my team and my stakeholders experience is pretty consistent day in, day out. Well, they need to give me feedback if it's not. But it's about being clear about what your brand is and the way you interact and being consistent. Because if you're not, and if you're not authentic, very, very hard to build trust and credibility with people. I did the session a lot in Asia, right? And you can imagine how this goes down in Asia from a cultural perspective. So I learned a lot in terms of how I had to kind of interact differently. To your point up the back, not change as a person, but there was a whole heap of techniques that I used around pace and around volume to ensure that I was able to connect without scaring everyone off, right? So I was still really consistent in my brand, but I just tailored certain things that I knew I needed to do culturally. But it's about clarity and consistency, okay? So follow-up actions for you guys. It's totally up to you what you do with the information that I have shared with you today. The girls are going to share, aside from all my photos that you probably don't need, the girls are going to share this deck with you, so you'll get all these slides. These are just some options for you in terms of making this stuff that you have committed an hour on a Monday night to hear about tonight, making it a little bit more real for you. It's totally up to you if you do it. These are some things I think could be interesting. Rate yourself out of 10. Take some time to kind of just think about, how well do I know myself? How well do I know my personal brand? Ask people. Feedback is a gift. Sometimes you don't like it, but ask people and start off with nice people that are going to give you some nice answers. Ask people, how would you describe me? What do you think my personal brand is? Start with your family or people that you trust and feel comfortable with, right? Start asking people if you haven't already. Ask someone how they describe you. Take some time to go back and complete that brand me activity with those 4 quadrants if you think it's useful. Just to put a little bit of thought in terms of what makes you unique, right? What's your elevator pitch on you? If you're stuck in the elevator from the 25th floor to ground, someone says, tell me about you. How do you answer it? In 60 seconds to knock their socks off. Okay? Is that an Australian term? I don't know. But that's what that exercise should help you do. And then test it. I remember I sent it to my sister. I had to do that brand me activity when my first week at Microsoft. Didn't know anyone. I was going to London, very nervous. They said, put this together with some pictures. And so I sent it to my sister, right? And I said, this is what I've got. Does it feel like me? Is it me, right? I'm just like, yes, it is. But test it with people, right? Because you want to be sure that your own perception of yourself is actually what other people are experiencing. But really think about what you do or don't do to bring your brand to life. If you describe yourself using some words like professional or trustworthy or whatever it might be, have a think about what you actually do to encourage people to use those words. If it's trustworthy, do you complete every deadline that you always set? Do you turn up every day early? Do you say yes to everything? Whatever it is, but think about what it is that might drive people to use those words. Think about how you contribute. This is kind of an interesting one for me. Think about how you contribute in meetings, in group scenarios, in one-on-ones. Very interesting, right? As an extrovert, sometimes it is the loudest person in the room who gets the attention. Sometimes they're not saying the best stuff, right? But if you're an extrovert, make sure that what you're saying is actually great and that you're interacting at the right times to profile yourself appropriately. And if you're not, that's cool as well. But how do you become comfortable in connecting in those scenarios in a way that is authentic and still gives you an opportunity to show people what you're made of? Hold yourself accountable. I don't do this enough. I normally do this when something goes poorly. Hold yourself accountable, though. At the end of each day, when you're in the car on the way home or you're on the train or whatever it is, kind of ask yourself that question. What did I do today to live up to my brand or to hinder it? Occasionally, when I've been in a situation I didn't handle as well as I should have, I kind of think, today, what I did took a couple of points off my personal brand in that area because of the way I handled that. But it just helps to kind of hold yourself accountable in terms of what you want your personal brand to look like, okay? So we are bang on time. This is my wrap up. Why I think this is important. Guys, it will give you just confidence and clarity around what you have to offer the world. Yes. And how you develop relationships and how you develop networks. Okay. You'll be able to articulate what makes you unique and be authentic. As I said here, it's not about being Cassie Fleming at all. Like I said, I can't be anything else. But it's about being you in a really authentic way and knowing what makes you unique. Live your brand consistently, and feedback is a gift. Please remember that. Questions, lovely lady up here. Oh, oh, great question. Question was, what's my opinion about online brand? Funnily enough, I do have some opinions, but they're my opinions only. They're not the opinions for the universe to share. I am I'm quite specific about my personal brand online and about my personal brand and my work brand. So, for example, my LinkedIn brand is really important to me. I know LinkedIn is not the be all and end all here, but for me, I'm super passionate in terms of what my profile looks like on LinkedIn. I keep it up to date. I make sure it's reflective of me, and I try and kind of use it to portray and develop my brand online, because I know that any candidate who's coming for an interview at Microsoft anywhere near me will be looking at my brand as any sort of credibility. Any senior person I try and reach out to on behalf of Microsoft will be looking at my profile and my overall brand. From a personal perspective, I keep Facebook personal. So I don't have a whole heap of work folks involved in my Facebook. It's not my bag. I'm not on it a lot, but I keep it separate. And I think it's massively important. I don't know if that answered your question as well enough. It is the first place people go. If I look at my guys all sitting here, recruiters, every candidate coming into this organization will be looking at their online profile before they come in. Every manager at Microsoft who interviews, people are looking at their brand and making perceptions from it. So I do think it's important. Yes. Yeah. Cool. I think it needs, the question was about how do you ensure that or is it important that your online presence kind of reflects your overall brand in the real world? I think it's important. I think it's important. I think it's important that what you're portraying online is reflective of who you are. Yes. Because most people are making the perception based on online before they meet you. So ideally, yes. I think it's fine to share some personal opinions as long as you're comfortable that people will form perceptions from them. Yeah, that's my view. Any other questions, folks? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I'll just give you my simplistic answer. My guys would have opinions as well. With regards to a LinkedIn profile, it should be up to date. Firstly, as absolute bare minimum. It should also articulate what you do and achievements. So it needs to articulate quite succinctly what your role's about, what your accountabilities are, and what your achievements are. For me, that's about it. And ideally, you should have a network that's reflective of who you are and what you are a part of. So it's the groups that you're involved in, it's the connections that you have. And ideally, they should reflect you as a kind of individual in the area that you operate in. So keep it up to date. Doesn't have to be an encyclopedia. It purely is like a summary of who you are. Don't go into too much detail, but make sure there's a good, crisp summary of each of the kind of positions that you've had. And proofread it, yes, good. No spelling mistakes. Photo is essential. Not crazy photo, like a normal photo. Just, it's all these things though, right? Photo, spelling and grammar, up to date, summary of positions. Anything you'd add? Skills. My guys, looking at them, nothing to add. No. Yes, question. Yes. 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 Mhm. Uh, okay. Firstly, have a good think about it before an interview. Know what makes you great and know what your weak areas are, right? And be comfortable talking about them, but in a way that's not going to talk the interviewer out of the position. There's a fine line, right? Because, for example, if I interview someone who can't come up with a weakness, I'm got concerns about them, frankly, because for me it says they probably haven't done enough thinking or they've never failed. Both of which I quite like in a person. I like someone to have failed and be able to tell me about it, because if you haven't failed, then there's not a heap of resilience, and you need to be able to learn from that, etc., etc. So if someone is unable to tell me about a weakness or a poor point of theirs, then I get concerned. But if someone's going to labor on about it, then it makes it concerning in terms of actually hiring them. So for me, for example, my previous role, I would have probably said, my weakness here is that I don't know Southeast Asia well. Right? What I do have, though, is a great network in this region. And what I do have is a commitment to understanding this region culturally and making a big effort to do that. Right? And so it's, for me, it's about talking to your weakness, but also having your plan there in terms of how you're going to combat that. Any other questions? Yes. No. The only one I'd say not to use is being a perfectionist. Can't stand it. Okay? No, but look, to be honest, I think gone are the days where people really ask that question as much in terms of what's your biggest weakness, but it's more about what's a failure that you've learned from, or if what I would normally ask people is, if you were successful in this role, what support do you think you would need from me to be able to ramp up quickly, or what concerns do you think I need to know about in terms of experience you may not have for this role. So I just think of some things that are true and authentic, but have a plan in terms of how you'll mitigate them. Yes. Yeah, it's a cool question. Yeah, the question was how, can I give some examples of how I've known that the job's done and it's time to move from a career perspective? I kind of don't have a black and white answer. I can talk you through a couple of my moves. I knew it was time to leave PwC, and personally, because I started there when I was 24, 25, didn't really have much experience, right? I said they wanted the personality, and so they still saw me as pretty much as a kid that was quite junior. And so 5 years later, I was kind of 30. I'd really grown and developed a lot, but I felt that it wasn't easy for them to see the leader that I wanted to be because of my history there. And I also knew that to be successful, I needed a different skill set that I couldn't get from PwC, which for me was the horrific process orientation I got from Westpac. So for me, it was kind of a calculated move in terms of I couldn't grow into a manager in the time that I wanted to at PwC. And I knew that to be successful, I needed to test if I could be successful in another environment, because PwC was the only environment I knew. And so I knew I had to go somewhere else and test myself. And I knew I needed a bigger environment, and I knew I needed a more process oriented environment to complement my skill set. So for me, it was personally, but it was also knowing the skill set I needed to develop that I couldn't get at PwC. But sometimes you won't be finished. It's tough, right? In APAC, it was the right time for me to move from Singapore to this role. because I'd been there 2.5 years. Super tough role, super tough. So much fixing to do, and I was tired. And I'd also gotten that organization to a cool place, but I knew I wasn't the right person to take it forward. It was at the point where it needed a different set of eyes to think about it a little bit differently. And it was personally, again, I was single at the time. I was offered an opportunity to move to Dubai, and it was hard to say no personally, because I knew the time would come where I wouldn't be as flexible personally. So for me, it always comes down to personal and professional in the decision, to be honest. Yes. Are we all right to keep going? Should we stop? A few minutes? It's 9:15. Yes. Yes. Frightening for you? Yes. What do I look like? Oh, good. Okay, I can. Shit, no, you're like interviewing me. Who's got a timer? Yeah, no, it's the right question. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. 9:15. It's 11:15 Dubai time. Okay. Hi everyone. Cassie Fleming, Australian by birth. I've been with Microsoft for 3 years and currently live in Dubai. My background is quite mixed. I started my life in hospitality, would you believe? I did a Bachelor of Business in hotels and started off running restaurants, right? What that did was give me a love of service and a love of creating a great experience for people. Also helped me learn some hard lessons early on in terms of managing people. Okay. Went to London, came back, didn't want to do that anymore. So I moved into corporate. Super fortunate over the last kind of 10, 15 years to have a great mix of experience across retail, banking, consumer, consulting, and into Microsoft now. Okay. And where I seem as an individual, I have a beautiful partner in Dubai, live in a lovely apartment opposite the beach, very, very passionate about having a balance in my life, spending quality time with family and friends, and ensuring that I also dedicate enough time to sport and my recreational kind of pursuits that keep me feel very balanced. Big communicator, if you hadn't noticed. High energy, very structured and process oriented, some of which is great, some of which can drive people mad. And an optimist all the way. The end. Is that okay? Shit, that's the hardest thing I've done all day. So it's not easy, right? Great question. Thank you very much. That's what I'm asking you guys to do especially. We might finish there unless anyone has a burning question. Are you sure we're gonna be allowed to get in there after being in Dubai? That's the question I get asked most when I'm in Israel, is what is it like to live in Dubai? It's very strange. It's quite fake, right? There's a lot of money, some of which is just delusional. It's very easy life in terms of everything's at your fingertips and everything is very easy, very man-made, very kind of built. I'm Australian. I love the beach and green trees and parks, and you don't have a lot of that. But the positives, amazingly culturally diverse. Unbelievable. 80% of people are non-Emiratis, so you have people from everywhere over the world. And culturally, it's been a huge learning for me. I had never operated in the Middle East or in India or, Israel, Africa, nothing. So for me, it's starting again in terms of really understanding a totally different cultural environment and doing it in a place like Dubai, which is reasonably fun as well. Great food and beverage if you're into restaurants, amazing. But it's a very strange place. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, ladies, for having me. Thank you for coming tonight.